Uh-oh, you just got in an accident. Now what? Yeah, that's the question most folks ask because they never really think about it. I'm never going to get in an accident until it happens. Okay, so now what? Well, today we're going to answer that question. So yeah, let's talk about that.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show.
Well, hey there, folks. Welcome to this day's episode of The Brian Nichols Show. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle Studios here in sunny Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered by the best heart health supplement in the world, Cardio Miracle. So, if you're looking to keep an eye on that old ticker, whether you're trying to improve your blood pressure, lower your resting heart rate, or just improve your pump at the gym like yours truly did, stick around. We'll talk about that later in today's episode. Or if you're super curious, go ahead, scan that little QR code over my shoulder, or simply head to cardiomiracle.com/TBNS. You're going to know you're in the right spot because you're going to see a little note on your browser saying you're shopping with Brian Nichols. And that means you're going to get 15% off your order at checkout. One more time, cardiomiracle.com/TBNS. But yes, you got in an accident, whether it's your fault or somebody else's fault. Now what? That's the question most folks, unfortunately, will find themselves asking because not many folks sit there and say, what happens if I get in an accident? What should I do? What's my blueprint or my roadmap, rather, when I'm trying to figure out what to do next? Well, we're going to discuss that today with someone who knows exactly what to do next. Joining us here on the show is David Lever. David, welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Brian. How about you?
Can't complain. Happy Saturday. We're recording here on a Saturday, and I'm really looking forward to our chat. And I know when you and I first connected here off air, I had teased you because you and I went to college right down the roads from each other, maybe a little bit different in time frame. But I would drive down Route 13 in New York, and David, see a lot of accidents there on Route 13. You'd have a lot of those like two lanes. All of a sudden you have a 2-lane passing lane, and then it just disappear. And people, they just be like, oh, I'm going to go now at the last minute, and then fender bender somebody. Well, then what happens, right? You get in a fender bender, and that's always something I saw. And I never really thought about what happens next. And then I got in an accident once. It wasn't my fault. It was this guy on a skateboard. He came rolling down through an intersection, like plowed into the side of my car as I was driving down the road. And I remember I was in my 20s. I remember just stopping. I'm like, oh my God, now what? You get out of the car and you're panicked. And now I was very lucky because it happened right in front of a nurse training building. So all of a sudden there's like 13 nurses that come rushing out to help. And I was like, wow. Of all the places this could have happened. And then like the EMS was literally around the corner. So I was like, well, I guess this, God was making sure we had this happen in the right spot. But I didn't know what to do next, right? There's police officers there, and I just kind of found myself like overwhelmed. Now, granted, it was nothing I did as at fault. The guy was found entirely at fault, and nothing ever happened from it. I never heard from anybody ever again. But that could not have been the outcome in some instances. So, David, I'd love to have you on the show today to talk from your legal perspective, because yes, this is an area you focus on in the law. When we're talking about accidents, like what folks should do after the unthinkable actually happens. But before we get there, David, do us a favor, introduce yourself here to the Brian Nichols Show audience, and just give us a little bit more context in terms of where you're in your legal practice. You help folks as they get into these unexpected accidents in life.
Well, thank you again, Brian. So my name is David Lever. I am one of the founding members of the law firm of Lever and Ecker. We are New York focused. Our main office is in White Plains, New York. We have satellite offices in New York City. And the type of work we do is representing people that are seriously injured in accidents in their quest to obtain justice from defendants, whether that's corporations, whether it's municipalities, and essentially we're fighting insurance companies for the most part. And so we don't represent insurance companies, we don't represent corporations, we only represent people. And I've been doing this for 36 years, and my entire legal career has been focused on helping people to be able to stand up and equal the playing field against corporate interests that have much more money, much more time, and have a slew of lawyers and investigators. So what I do is I help people to be able to stand up and fight to get what they deserve.
And let's talk about that. When the unthinkable happens, right? You get into an accident, whether it's a fender bender or it's something a little bit more serious, right? What happens next? And you know, I would love for you, David, because you go through this, I'm sure, on a constant basis with your clients. Like, what do you advise if somebody were to call you, like literally the moment after they get into the accident, they say, David, got in an accident. Talk us through your next steps.
Well, the first thing I always ask them is if they were injured. And if they're injured, the most important thing that a person needs to do is to get immediate medical attention, because nothing else matters if you're not feeling well, or God forbid it's something very serious. You may need urgent medical attention. So that's the first thing I always tell people. Are you okay? And if they say yes, I say, count your blessings. If they're not okay, I always tell them to make sure to go to the hospital or to get to their doctor right away. I also tell people, if, as you said, someone was calling me right after something happened, I would say, make sure that you contact the police or report this, whether it's, let's say, an on-the-job accident, you want to tell a supervisor. I definitely tell people that to the extent that they're able to do it, to make sure to preserve evidence. So if they can take photographs, or even if they can't, ideally someone potentially can come and take photos, or if there's videos, let's secure it. I also tell them that they should not speak to insurance companies, because the insurance companies, and maybe they don't like to hear this, but they're not really there to help people. It's a beautiful business model. They take your premium and then they deny everyone's claim. So guys like me, what we do is we help level the playing field. In other words, if the insurance companies were fair, people wouldn't need lawyers like me, and I'd be doing something else for a living. But I found in 36 years of doing this that people need help, particularly those people that are not sophisticated with insurance claims and personal injury lawsuits. The other thing I tell people to do is to contact an attorney, because when a lawyer gets involved, ideally the lawyer can say to that person, look, the only thing you have to focus on is getting better, getting whatever medical care you need, and doing what you can to get your life as close to normal as possible, and to let me and my firm take care of everything else. So any paperwork, any phone calls, anything like that, we handle, so that our clients can focus on getting better. And we try to make it simple for them. And it's very stressful, because you have people that don't feel well, sometimes with very significant problems that are life-altering. You have people who all of a sudden can't work, and they're like, how are we going to pay the rent or the mortgage? How are we going to provide food for our family? Sometimes people lose their jobs, they lose their medical insurance, and they're screwed. So we try to help get them through that process. It's not just sitting back and waiting to collect a check at the end of the case. It's guiding people through what, in many instances, is the most challenging episode of their life.
Yeah. Well, tell me more about the stuff kind of behind the scenes, right? Because there's the immediate aftermath of you getting the accident, and to your point, the things you have to document immediately, right? Or the things you need to take care of, like to your point, go to the hospital, like go seek medical attention. But like then there's the weeks later, the months later, the letters you're gonna get, the phone calls you're gonna have, the stress that's going to be on that family, or to your point, the surgeries that they're going to have, the issues they're now having to deal with, whether it's going through physical therapy or multiple surgeries, or changing their entire livelihoods. To your point, there's a lot of things I think folks just don't consider. So just kind of give us a little bit more context of what that traditionally looks like. What does that timeline look like behind the scenes? How long do you see people start these conversations with insurance, via you guys, right? Obviously, but like to actually get some type of help. And then like if there's a situation where somebody's at fault, right? And you actually have to go to court, like what does that process look like?
Well, the process usually takes some time, because first and foremost, if someone doesn't feel well today, nobody really knows how long it's going to take for them to get better. Some people never get better, and they end up with some type of permanent disability. Mm-hmm. Now, what that looks like is always on a case-by-case basis. So what we always tell our clients is continue to get whatever medical treatment you think you need and what your doctors recommend. And let's see what happens, right? Because some people with a back injury might get better in a week. Some people might end up with spine surgery 6 months later and then have a chronic problem that they have to live with for the rest of their life. So when it comes to trying to settle a case, I always tell people it takes time because we need to get a sense of what the future is going to look like for them and to give their doctors also an opportunity to opine as to, what the future looks like. So it's not just past pain and suffering, which is a component of every case, but also future pain and suffering. What's the future going to look like? If you're 30 years old and you have a traumatic event that happens and you end up with an injury that's going to be permanent, you're going to be dealing with that, sadly, for 50, 60, 70 years. Mm-hmm. So based on what that looks like, that will impact what their case is going to look like. And as far as the court system, even if we file a lawsuit the day we retain the case, and usually we need to do a little investigation before we can start a lawsuit, of course, but
all right, it's the holidays, which means we're all doing that annual dance, pretending that we love this time of year while secretly we're running on stress, sugar, and whatever's left of our sanity. You've got the office parties, the family gatherings, the flights, the long lines, the weird cookie that Aunt Carol made, and on top of that, the weather's colder, you're eating heavier, you're sleeping less, and your immune system is basically sending you texts saying like, hey buddy, I'm not okay. And let's be real, December has a way of exposing everything your body has already been struggling with. Low energy, amplified. Brain fog, doubled. Circulation, frozen like your car windshield. And don't even get me started on inflammation after you've had your fifth helping of just a little more at dinner. See, that's where Cardio Miracle comes in. It gives your body that one thing the holidays steal the most, nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is actually what helps the blood flow. It helps oxygen reach your cells, support your immune system, and helps your body bounce back from the stress, the sugar, the travel, the cold weather, all of it. And I've been drinking it every day, morning and night, because I don't have time to crash halfway through the month. And Cardio Miracle keeps me steady, clear-headed, energized, and able to actually enjoy the holidays instead of just survive them. So if you want to give yourself the gift of not feeling like you're worn out at Christmas, just go ahead and scan the QR code over my shoulder, click that little link in the show notes, or visit cardiomiracle.com/TBNS to grab yours. And by the way, you'll get 15% off at checkout. And now, let's get back to the show.
It's going to take time because there are a number of cases and only so many judges. So usually these cases in New York, if you're going to have to go to trial, I always tell people that they should expect at least 1 to 2 years before their case resolves. Depending on where their lawsuit is brought, it can be longer than that because there are delays. Once you tell the judge, okay, all the work has been done, discovery process is done, give us a trial date, the court then says, get on the back of the line. And that line could be 1 year, it could be 2 years, some places it could be 3 years. And all that time, the insurance companies can sit on their money and invest it. So what we have to do is continue to try to shift the risk onto the insurance companies. In other words, put them in a position where they say, we're better off if we settle this case than letting a jury decide it.
How do we... I'm not asking you to have the magic wand, David. I don't feel you have to have the magic wand here, but like, how do we fix that broken system to your point? Like because you see this, like this is not just in the instances we're talking about here with our court cases being so stacked up and backed up in that case. But I mean, we see this in immigration. We see this. I mean, this is across the board. It feels like in our justice system. So like, why is that? And how do we fix that? Can we fix that?
Well, I mean, to some extent, the process can move faster, but a lot of that depends on the courts, depends who's running the system. And there are people who might think there are too many lawsuits, particularly with the type of work that I do. But I always say that if a case doesn't have merit, then the insurance company should absolutely defend that case. And if a case doesn't have merit, then the claimant shouldn't be compensated for that. But the reality is there are way too many people getting into accidents. And unfortunately, too many people that are dealing with injuries and disability and emotional stress and financial pressures. So I think the way to do it would be to just try to create a system where the process moves faster. Whether that can happen, I don't know. I know that certain counties that I practice in, the courts are much quicker than others. Like certain counties, I know that once we put the case on the trial calendar, we might get a trial date within a year. Whereas other places, we know that we're going to wait a while. So, my feeling is we're always dealing with insurance companies and corporations and certain interests that are always looking to take rights away from people, take away the right to a trial by jury, put limits on what a person can recover for pain and suffering. And I really don't think that that's fair, because if someone is not, let's say, a big earner and they don't have a wage claim, but they have a very serious injury, they may not, let's say someone, God forbid, loses their eyesight. They may not need a lot of medical attention going forward, but the damages are significant. So it's a system that definitely can be improved. I feel that the work I do is very important because it allows people to feel that they get justice, and that if they're injured through no fault of their own, that they should be compensated for that.
On the flip side, and this is the unfortunate reality, is that for every person who is justly harmed in an accident and seeking rightful compensation, there are the people who will abuse the system. And we see this a lot, right? You have your insurance fraud cases. And with the advent of like modern technology, you look at dash cams or the Teslas, for example, that record everything. You're seeing a lot more examples of people deliberately committing fraud, whether that's, trying to brake check somebody in front of them on the interstate and then saying, "Oh my gosh, you rear-ended me. You're at fault," right? I lived in Philadelphia for 7 years, and I could not tell you how many just insane drivers I would have to deal with on a daily basis, driving from where I lived in Philadelphia to where I worked over in New Jersey. I mean, when you cross that Ben Franklin Bridge and you get into Jersey, good luck, everybody, when you get onto Route 38 out there. And like, in Philadelphia, it's a free-for-all. I mean, literally saw people, I'd be sitting in traffic at a stoplight, and I'd see people drive onto the sidewalk, and I'm like, what is happening? Where am I right now? But with that being said, right, going back to the folks who, unfortunately, they will abuse the system. They will look to commit fraud because they can, and they can get away with it in some instances. Like, in your world, how does that impact your ability to effectively seek justice for people who are wrongfully, harmed when they're out just, driving or doing whatever, and they get into an accident or whatnot?
Well, first and foremost, there's no place for fraud in our system. 100%, any case that is not legitimate shouldn't be brought. And if it's brought, it should be defended vigorously by the insurance companies. But what I can tell you, Brian, is that insurance companies generally aren't going to pay money to people that don't have a real case. What I also can tell you is that there are more people that get screwed by insurance companies than those that may allegedly take advantage of the system. So I don't think any of those cases, when you hear of someone who is potentially staging an accident, I think those people should be prosecuted, and they should not be able to get away with that. In addition, that casts a negative light on the good work that people like myself do. So in terms of the cases that we take, we are a boutique practice, so we don't handle a lot of cases, and therefore we can be very selective in the cases that we take, so that we can make sure that we can prosecute a case as quickly as possible for our clients. I think that sometimes you read about stories in the news about fraud, and there are some cases where that's not proven out. But of course, when that's not proven out, when someone gets acquitted of something, that doesn't make the front page of the news. It's not as sensational as the initial allegation. But I do think that the focus should be on making sure that only legitimate claims are brought, and anything that is not significant shouldn't be brought.
And you can tell, by the way, there's a definite disdain from the American populace when it comes to looking at insurance companies. And one look no further than what happened last year. There was the murder of Brian Thompson, United Healthcare CEO in New York City, by allegedly by Luigi Mangione. And the case is that he did so because he had seen, I think it was himself, have back injuries or something along those lines, where he had put in for a request for, I think it was surgery at United Healthcare. The claims were denied, and he just felt, like, and unfortunately, in his killing of Brian Thompson, you see the response from a lot of folks that was in the overwhelming positive. And I paused, David, because, to your point, kind of in our conversation today, the insurance companies are not necessarily the good guys, but I would never say that they're the bad guys to the point that we should be seeing that kind of thing happen. But there is a definite mistrust. There is a disdain towards these insurance companies. How can the insurance companies in general, and doesn't have to be, you looking at United Healthcare in this use case, but just across the board, more your world, but what can they do differently? What can they do better to help curry more trust and more positive sentiment with essentially their customers?
Well, they could pay and write the check on claims that are clear. I can remember a case I had many years ago where there was a drunk driver who killed two young men, and I represented one of them. And there wasn't a lot of insurance that was even available on the case, but the insurance company dragged it out. They should have written the check to the family on day one. And we literally had to litigate that case right up to the point of starting a trial and picking a jury. So I think that there are situations that are so clear cut that they should do the right thing and pay, because that's what people are paying for. Now, we had a case recently where we had a gentleman who was in his late 30s who was rear-ended by a truck. They had $1 million in insurance. He had neck surgery. And they offered $100,000, which was, in our opinion, a joke. So we tried the case, and jury came back at $2.95 million. And we settled the case for substantially over what the insurance company's insurance was, because what they did was they left their insured, they hung them out to dry. They could have settled it in good faith, but yet they acted in bad faith. So they ended up paying $2.75 million, which meant that not only did they have to write the $1 million check that their insured paid for, but they literally had to write a check for $1,750,000 from home office.
But they know that, right, David? Like, don't they know that that's going to be the outcome more often than not when they're challenged? If I was them and I'm putting myself in a business proposition, I would think it'd make sense to be like, dude, just like give him a fair offer, because otherwise we're going to be paying more than we would if we were to give him this stupid low ball that's insultingly low as an offer. Like, what are we doing? We're putting ourselves at a disadvantage. Like, you think that they make billions of dollars. You think that they would know that, or at least have people there who would know that.
Well, you would think so. The way I always look at it is I don't have the checkbook, right? So I can't write the check. So all I can do is keep pushing forward for each of my clients. But there are many situations where I literally scratch my head and say, what the heck are they thinking? And in this case, it worked out very favorably for my client. But the reality is, if they had acted in good faith from day one, of course, when the case developed and we were getting closer to trial, they could have settled that case for much less money. So they did our client a favor at the end of the day.
Yeah, man, going from the business perspective, I'm still so stuck because I'm a business guy by trade. Like I'm a sales and a sales and marketing executive, and like this is my world. And just like as a company, I think that would be a really sexy value proposition to say like, yeah, we're doing insurance the right way. Where is that? Like I would think that you might. And I don't want this. It sounds so like weird for me to say because this is a more like free market capitalist show, right? But like, there comes a point where it's like, how many billions of dollars do you need to compete against the other big guys? Like, you can create a great insurance company, make a really nice profit, everybody's fat and happy, and you don't need to like just continue to like hoard just at the expense of the people you're trying to serve. Like, I feel there's got to be a middle ground, and that would be a differentiator in the marketplace. But who am I?
Well, I agree with you. And look, when you mentioned what happened to Brian Thompson, I think that was absolutely terrible. And no matter how someone is treated, they should not resort to violence. And I'll give, but on the other hand, and I'm not saying that what happened can be condoned in any respect. There are many people that are put in a position where they can't get the medical care that they need. And so you have bean counters, so to speak, that aren't even doctors deciding whether someone should get a medical procedure approved or not. And that's unfortunate. And
it's
our system,
it's dystopian.
Yeah. I mean, we pay a lot of money for insurance, and yet the system sucks.
There's the quote right there. Yeah, we pay a lot for the system, and the system sucks. And that right there is the unfortunate reality, and why so many people, I think, are just disaffected with the overarching system. Right there is such a negative sentiment towards healthcare, towards insurance, towards the drug organizations, towards government, towards the bureaucracies, towards the corporate media. Like everybody, and I don't know. I think I go back. I'm not trying to make this a COVID conversation, but I think a lot of just general trust was broken back during COVID, or a lot of people just started saying like, "What is going on?" And they started to ask more questions and started to be a lot more skeptical than maybe they were previously. And I think we're seeing this really manifest in instances like this around insurance. Like, are you kidding me? My premiums are skyrocketing and I can't get approved for a basic basic service. What? Help me understand that, insurance company. Oh, numbers and graph go up to the right. And it's just like, no, come on, help me out here. Like, and we're seeing in the actual marketplace, there are alternatives that are popping up, like Crowd Health, for example. It's not a one-to-one comparison for insurance, but It's something that is showing, promise that there are people saying, God, man, there's got to be a better way to do this. But then there comes the reality of like the red tape, the bureaucracies. And David, like, this is something I'm sure you deal with in the legal world as well. But like, you see, there are so many areas where it makes it difficult for legitimate competition to take place. And in my experience, a lot of that is due to the fact that a lot of these large insurance companies, they are absolutely lining the pockets of these politicians who are writing the laws, making it much more favorable for them to do business and keep their competition at bay, which, as a free market guy, that's inherently against a free market competitive system, because I want competition. Competition breeds better costs and increase in innovation and way of doing things. And this is the opposite of that.
100%. And the little guy really doesn't stand a chance against these big interests. And I agree with you that politically, there are a lot of things that these corporations are allowed to get away with because of lobbying efforts and just making sure they know who to go to protect their continued success. But I think that when you look at it, it's we see all the time, like we have clients who, let's say they have an accident and there's a workers' compensation component and they need to have an MRI, for example. That's ordered by a doctor. that needs to be approved before my client can get that. And sometimes that's withheld unnecessarily. So a person who needs certain medical attention, they can't even get to the bottom of what's going on with that person because they can't get the test. And they have to wait for a hearing, and then they have to hope it's approved, or people are out of work and they're not getting their reimbursement for lost wages through insurance. And in the meantime, they're calling us up and saying, I can't pay my bills.
Right.
So we have to push real hard just to get them what they're entitled to. And I think that that's really not fair. But at the same token, that's what helps me to feel better about what I do, because I know that I can make a difference for people. And that's
David, I am. As I say, I've really truly enjoyed this conversation, and I know we're hard pressed for time. I just looked at the clock and I was like, "Oops, I'm keeping you later than I promised." But let's do this. We go towards the end of the show. We do a little part called Final Thoughts, and the idea is let's wrap this episode up in a nice, neat bow. And just to give my final thoughts, I think this is an area, as folks who my audience is predominantly going to be more free market folks, entrepreneurs, folks more in the I'd say moderate, middle, centrist, right, and more of like the small L libertarian mindset. I would say to those folks, like there is this weird instinctual kind of reaction to when you hear this like corporation versus the little guy. I don't know what it is to like just automatically go like, yay, corporation, like support them. Like, are you not like for big business? Or not business, but like, are you not in favor of business? That's the argument that seems just like get knee-jerk reaction. But you have to time out, guys, and look at like, okay, it's not that we're anti-business. It's a matter of we're anti-uncompetitive business. I'm not for a company that's using their market share to literally buy the lawmakers who are making it so they can do their jobs easier and keep their competition away, right? Like that's not competitive in a marketplace. Like we have to be aware that this isn't one of those stories where it's like, some bleeding heart kind of approach to these conversations. This is a real life example of like government and business working hand in hand, which, by the way, that's not free market. That's what we call a corporatist society. But that's a different conversation for a different day. David, I'm going to go ahead and leave things there on my end. You bring us home. What do you want the audience to take away from today's conversation? And of course, if folks are curious and they want to learn more from you, where can they go ahead and reach out?
Well, first of all, I think what I'm trying to say is that there should be a degree of fairness. And I think it's a zero-sum game when you're dealing with a lot of these insurance companies and corporate interests, that they look to win and they don't really care about the damage that is left in the wake of something that happens. So my focus is to help people to be able to, again, get back what's been taken away from them. And there are a lot of times that no matter what I can do, I can't give them back what they've lost, because if they can't walk, or God forbid they lose a family member, no amount of money can ever make that right. So in terms of my firm, we handle primarily motor vehicle collisions. We deal with construction accidents. We deal with premise liability cases where there could be a trip and fall of some kind. And we look to hold people accountable. Now, there are a lot of people that come to me and I tell them, I'm really sorry, but I can't help you because I may not see a path for them, or I might not think that the case meets the criteria for my firm. But look, I understand that people are in business to make money, right? And so people who are in corporations and their shareholders, they're all expecting that the people that are running these corporations are going to try to get the best return they can for them. So I get that. So
what's in the best interest of the shareholders? Yep.
Yeah, but and what's in the best interest of the shareholders isn't necessarily in the best interest of people. So if I can ever answer someone's questions, I'm more than happy to do so. My website is www.leverecker.com, and the call is always free. We're always happy to give people advice. There are even people that we speak to and we tell them that they don't have a case, but at least they've had the opportunity to speak to a lawyer to know whether they have something that they can pursue or can't pursue. And my hope, Brian, is that accidents wouldn't happen, and then I can go do something more fun, maybe something like what you do. But I enjoy my work, and I really like helping people because I think it makes a difference, and that makes me happy.
Amen. We'll reach up to the big guy upstairs and see if he can get rid of accidents. I'll give him a shout and see what we can arrange. David, this has been a great chat. Thank you so much for joining us. And folks, by the way, if you enjoyed today's conversation, do me a favor, go ahead and give it a share. When you do, tag yours truly at B Nichols Liberty on X, Facebook, and Instagram. As for the show, you can watch the show on your favorite video platforms like YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Or you can go ahead and listen to the show on the go on your favorite podcast catchers like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, wherever it is you consume your podcast content. Hit subscribe. And by the way, we have over 1,000 episodes here of The Brian Nichols Show. I guarantee a few of them should leave you there educated, enlightened, and informed. So go ahead and give a few a listen. And by the way, folks, one more time, if you want to support The Brian Nichols Show, go ahead and support our sponsors like Cardio Miracle, or you can go ahead and give us a one-time donation at briannicholsshow.com/support. With that being said, thank you for joining us, David, and audience, thank you for joining us today. Brian Nichols signing off here on The Brian Nichols Show for David Lever. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.